Hi Sewing Bees, I'm Sookie and welcome to the Beehive. Over the past year, I've made a bunch of these non-sewing Sewing Notions videos and you all seem to love them. I have gone through thousands of comments and found the best ideas from you that I'm now going to put into the video. So non-sewing Sewing Notions are essentially just things that are laying around your house and or are really affordable that you can get like at the dollar store or at big box stores. So thank you so much for sharing your ideas, and now let's go ahead and talk about 10 more ideas of non-sewing Sewing Notions. The first up is a pastry scraper. Sometimes it's also referred to as a cutter or a chopper. It is a metal device. It usually has this little round thing here. I've also seen this as plastic. And almost all of them that I've seen have some unit of measurement. So this one is inches. You know, I am in the United States, so inches is what we typically use here. And so there's several suggestions from you all. And the very first one was very simply to press seams. So for example, if you have a material that you need to press, of course, you just fold it in half and you would take your iron and you would press it. But what was suggested is to use this inside the area and you will get really nice crisp seams. Now keep in mind that this is metal, so if you touch this after it's been ironed, it's going to be hot. So just kind of keep that in mind. And I just wanted to test it out and see, and yeah, I mean, it does a really nice job. So if you're working with a material that's a little more tricky, perhaps like a synthetic that just doesn't want to press down flat, that might be an option. Another was suggested to use this as a folding tool. And so I kind of tried to ask for a little bit more elaboration, and there was a couple of different people who had given me answers. And one of them was very simply using it as a folding tool in the sense where you would just fold your material and kind of as a scraper fold it. But I have to just warn you to be really careful not to stretch the material. So in light of that, some of the suggestions back were to use a wool pressing pad. So if you do have something like that, or I mean, wool pressing pads can be kind of expensive. So if you just have like at the thrift store and you find like an old wool jacket, that works great too. Layer it up a few times. But this would be my suggestion, is just be really careful that you don't stretch the material. So as you're using this as a folding tool, that might be something to consider. The other person who had mentioned the idea of using it as a folding tool was referencing it more as like getting really nice pleats. So as you're pressing, you would do the pressing and then you would go to the next section to get some really cute pleats. So now we're actually pressing this side and also that side there. But this just helps you get nice, crisp lines. And I will say that I was concerned that it would stretch it, but it really doesn't. I mean, you can kind of see that the pleat has started to form really nicely. So, and then because it has that, the unit of measurement, take advantage of that too. I also thought that this would get super hot and burn my fingertips, and it has yet to do that. So that's also a really big plus. And the last suggestion that came in from my YouTube subscribers was really kind of cool. It's actually to use this as a scraper. So if you've got a bunch of scraps or a bunch of stuff on your countertop, especially scraps, because so many of us like to save our scraps. I don't always save mine and keep them. I oftentimes will save them and give them to my friends. But I do have to say that just like that, I was able to scoop up my scraps and toss it in a bag. So, hey, why not use that as a scrap picker-upper? There are so many great ideas on how to hold your ruler, grip your ruler, and we've covered many of them throughout this series. But this was one that I've been wanting to talk about, and a lot of friends had mentioned to turn your ruler to the wrong side, and with some hot glue, you would just put some dots in the different corners. What's cool about this is it doesn't impede the lines, so you can still see through the lines, and it'll just help grip the fabric a little bit better. I'm also, from another suggestion from another video, I'm using the parchment paper underneath my hot glue gun, so if anything does fall onto the surface, it doesn't ruin it. So we'll just give that a minute to cool down. Okay, so now that we have the hot glue little bubbles at the bottom of the wrong side of the ruler, let's go ahead and see how this works. So I have seen this for a while and I've always thought it was really interesting. My biggest concern was that it would lift the ruler too high off of the surface. So let's just kind of see. We're just going to kind of cut around this square. No, I think it's pretty good, actually. I mean, definitely an alternative, especially if you've got rulers that tend to slip a lot on you. This might be an inexpensive option because I know that there's little things that you can buy to stick on the bottom of your ruler, and this might serve the purpose if you have some hot glue sticks. I mean, all of us crafters have a hot glue gun somewhere in our sewing space. So honestly, I think that worked pretty good. Yeah, for sure. So maybe the next time I would do a little bit better job, maybe smushing it down, or I mean, I don't know. I just kind of put it on there and I wasn't consistent or even. You can kind of see that this one even has a little bit of a mess, but you know what? It definitely worked. I thought I would also mention that if you decide you don't want it on there anymore, just get a regular butter knife or kitchen knife and you can just really gently kind of scrape it off. And it doesn't seem to hurt the ruler, especially on the areas where I kind of didn't have such a clean surface. So yeah, you are able to get it off as well if you decide that this isn't working for you. The next is a silicone baby bib that can go underneath the front of a serger or a sewing machine, or honestly just any workspace. When it comes to putting it under the serger, you're still going to want to make sure that the machine is laying flat. So I think if I was going to keep this as a permanent fixture, I would probably cut off portions of it and then tape the bib down. But if you want to be able to move it from space to space, it might be something that you have to kind of just maneuver and make sure that it's laying flat. Just in front of your machine. So as you're stitching, your thread can get caught into the little catcher of the bib, and then it's really easy to scoop out the materials. But this would also be really nice when you're working with a sewing machine and or even just kind of like a little scrap collector spot on your cutting table. So here's another option, is to keep it completely intact, the bib that is, and then you could place one of these magnetic pin cushions right in the center. It kind of seems to fit really perfect. And then this can just be your little thread collector, your thread bin. Okay, so let's talk about straws. There's lots of uses for straws, and we've covered a few in this video series before, but we haven't mentioned this one. I thought this was kind of a neat idea. You can take the straws that have the bendable pieces to them, and you can very simply slide your bobbins onto it. And now you have bobbin storage. I suppose you could even put them into the other end, you know, bend it so that you could connect them, but you could keep a nice row of bobbins on there very easily. Now with the larger bobbins, like this one here, that this goes on like my Bernina 7 series, and I feel like it's too wobbly. I don't think that would really do any good. And then the boba straws that you can get were too big, so they didn't really go through there. But I did find out that you can cut these straws down to smaller sections. So like maybe like a 1/4 of an inch section, and then take that section and then cut it. And then after you have wound your thread back on to your bobbin, you can take this little section and just simply wrap it around. And just like that, it's going to hold your bobbin thread in place. So I thought that was really cool and clever. The other idea with the boba straws is you can use it as a point turner. Now you are going to need something that's going to push it into the other side, and I'm just using a number 2 pencil, really focusing on the eraser side. So you're very simply going to take the boba straw and slip it up to the bottom of the tube, and then you're going to take about 1 inch of the material, maybe a 1/2 inch of the material past where the straw is, and just start to tuck it in with the eraser side. And then you feed this part of the tube down, and you'll see that it kind of just got the tube started, and that's really all you need to do when you're turning a tube right side out. So give that a try with a pencil and a boba straw. This is actually a really cool tip. I can't believe I hadn't seen this before, and it's called Pinstripe Tape. You can get it in the automotive section, and you can get it in multiple sizes. I actually ended up finding this on Amazon as kind of like a whole kit, and I'm really excited about using it. The kit that I got has 1/2 inch wide, 1/4 inch wide, 1/8 inch, and 1/16 of an inch. So you could do a lot of different stitch kind of combinations using this. So today I'm going to just demonstrate it with the 1/4 inch. And once you find the end of your tape, you can kind of notice that it's a low adhesive tape, which is going to be great for placing on fabric. Now what I have here is just a little sandwich of cotton material on either side and a thin layer of batting in the middle. And let's say that you just want to do some angular rows of 1/4 inch stitching, and you can just see how I tear it right away. So let's say maybe I want it somewhat even. That would be nice. And I'm doing it on an angle just so that you can kind of see how it's going to really stitch as opposed to just straight. But you can have a lot of fun. I mean, I'm going to do another almost like a sun ray pattern here, or like a sunburst. I think I'll move this one. And so all I'm going to do is go to my machine now, and I'm going to stitch on one side of this, or I could stitch on both sides, or you could even stitch down the center. So this is going to be a 1/4 of an inch distance from here to here. If you weren't going to sew on either side, it really wouldn't matter. I mean, you could use the 1/2 inch or any of them. So I am going to stitch on both sides. So let's go to the machine. The first thing I'm going to do is I am going to shorten the top where the tape is so that it doesn't stick to the bed of the machine. Kind of in experimenting, I noticed that it wanted to do that. What I'm going to do is stitch on one side of all of them and then flip it and then stitch on the other side. Here we go. Okay, and there we go. And now all you got to do is just peel away the tape, and you have perfect distance in between the stitching. I think a few of those got caught, the stitches got caught on the tape, but even so, it still peeled off nicely. And there you go. You can imagine the fun you would have with all the different sizes of this pinstripe tape. The next is a metal knife holder, and this is something that you would mount on your wall. And I just don't personally have a place that I would put this, and all of my scissors are kept in drawers and in little containers. However, this is very clever, and they are sold everywhere. You can go to pretty much any big box store, hardware store. I mean, you might even be able to find this at like a dollar store, definitely Amazon. But really, it's just simply mount the metal knife holder up against the wall and use it to hold all of your scissors and your cutlery. I mean, it's really cool. You can use it for basically anything that's made that will magnetize itself to this. So I would have to just caution you to make sure that you are always putting the sharp pieces toward the down position. Other than that, I think it's a really clever idea. And if you have space on your wall and you don't have small little fingers, you know, that you need to worry about. I mean, if I had small children, I absolutely would not do this, but it's definitely an option. Okay, let's say that you want to stitch on some vinyl, but you don't have a Teflon presser foot. You can just use your regular presser foot and a piece of matte Scotch tape. You just want to make sure that that tape covers the bottom of the presser foot. It doesn't even have to go on pretty. You don't need to worry about cutting around it or even worry about cutting through the opening where the needle's going to go through, because quite honestly, your needle will go right through it. So we're just going to snap our presser foot on and start stitching. And you'll notice that it just glided right through, no problems whatsoever. The stitching was really great, and I think what's really cool about the idea of using the tape on the bottom of the presser foot is you could do this with any presser feet. So give that a try. The next is dental wax, and this is really used for those who have braces. And now that my daughter has braces, I totally get it. Really, it's meant for taking a tiny little piece and putting it between where the brackets are and your gums and the inside of your mouth, and it just kind of helps ease the pain of having braces. But where the suggestions came in that were really great, I liked, where you can take one big piece of it and actually place it like on the front of your machine. It doesn't really matter where, it's going to easily come off, and you could use it as a temporary pincushion. Another idea was to actually use it as a place to store your needles or your ones that you're not using anymore. You could even just kind of keep it open, or maybe in the middle of using multiple needles for a project, and really, because it's not going to hurt the needle, and so you could just kind of use it like that. And then the last idea was, once the wax is gone, you could use this container to store old needles before you dispose of them. There were lots of ideas for using the Swiffer lint rags or dust cloths, and I've seen even like generic ones of these, and sometimes you use one and it barely gets dirty, so maybe you can kind of reuse it over and over again for smaller areas that aren't maybe, you know, like gunk. I have to say, this was really cool. This is one of the ideas to pick up scraps of material and also threads, and so I'm just going to kind of dedicate one side to the threads. And just like that, I was able to pick up all the threads, and there's just like 2 little threads here left over. So it did a pretty good job. So now let's go ahead and kind of try and hold on to that. And then we will attempt to do the same thing with the fabric scraps. Now, with the exception of that little guy, I guess it does work. So give that a try. And then you could just really kind of dump this out in the trash and totally reuse this over and over again. Another thing you can do with the Swiffer lint sheets is very simply keep your machine clean. It works really great. You're able to get into the small areas and keep the front of your machine dust-free. Another idea for the Swiffer lint cloths I thought was very interesting, and it was to help clean up pins. So if you happen to drop your pins on the bottom of the floor and you don't have a magnet to pick them up, and you have one of these, I thought this was kind of interesting. So I gave it a whirl, and just like that, I was able to pick up all of the straight pins, and they didn't poke my fingers. So I thought that was kind of cool. Well, I have another idea for if you have problems with your foot pedal sliding all over the place while you're trying to stitch, whether you're on carpet or tile or a hardwood floor. It really just depends, and we've offered several suggestions throughout this series of videos on the non-sewing sewing notions. And again, it kind of just depends on what you're working with. So for me, I am on like a linoleum, you know, like a fake wood, and so this typically works okay for me, but sometimes it wants to slide around. So there's definitely some other solutions that have been offered throughout the videos, but I've never covered this, and it's very simply the adhesive back Velcro. So now I have to say it depends on what surface you're working with. If you're with a carpet, I would say that the tooth side, the one that's more like scratchy, you can hear it there, that is going to be better on the bottom of your foot pedal. Whereas if you're on the tile floor, it might be better to have the loop side that's a little softer. So this scratchy side would be better for carpet because it will actually like literally grip to the carpet, and you will very simply just peel away the adhesive backing there, or you know, the paper backing, and then you'd have the adhesive, and you would just put it along the top and the bottom. And again, I've got just enough here just to kind of show you. So the scratchy piece would be great for carpet, and then if you were going to work with like the smoother surface tile and linoleum and maybe even hardwood, you'd want to use the softer base. So give that a try. Well, I really hope you enjoyed this video and gained some insight, and do me a favor and share this with one of your sewing friends that you think could take advantage of some of these non-sewing sewing notions. And until I see you next time, I hope you have a creative day. Bye-bye.